Dragon Ball Super has some of the most unique power progression of the main 5 Dragon Ball series. With the strongest characters being abundantly clear by the end of the anime, much of the characters exist in some bizarre limbo, with much of the community not really knowing where to place them power-wise. This has led to me wanting to take on the challenge of placing many of these characters in a ranked order myself. To be clear, this video is not some grand power scaling list that goes over every character in the DBS anime. Particularly, this video has evolved from an idea I had about scaling the vague Super Saiyan Blue tier characters that turned into me scaling the stronger characters of the Tournament of Power, as well as the Goku Black Arc. And before we get any further, I just want to add that this is the anime only. If you guys want to see me do the same thing with the manga, I'd be happy to. Just let me know in the comments below. Furthermore, I have to give a shout out to YouTuber Justin's Den, whose community polls regularly pop up in my feed asking such questions like Topo vs. Kefla, or ToP Frieza vs. Ultimate Gohan. Most recently, at the time of writing this intro, was Tournament of Power Hit vs. Blue Vegeta. I don't really watch his videos, but I don't want to pretend that I wasn't inspired, so I will leave a link to his channel in the description below. However, I'm willing to bet that if you're watching this guy with 2,000 subscribers, you've probably already checked out the guy with 150,000 subscribers. Next up is the rules of this list. The characters are going to be assessed on a 1v1 battle to the death. They will be ranked based on various factors, including attack potency, durability, speed, abilities/hacks, as well as intellect/strategic capabilities. Things like the environment/battleground will not be taken into account. Now for the tiering system, this is going to be both a numbered list as well as a tier list. This means that although there will be tiers, there will also be a concrete hierarchy. There's a reason for this. That being that I wanted to make a numbered list that has a definitive order, but also show the ways in which certain characters are interchangeable or debatable on said list. This means that the ordering within the individual tier does matter, but if there are characters in the same tier, then I think their placement is debatable within said tier. If a character is below or above that tier, then I don't think it's something that's up for debate. For those who may not understand, let's use a brief example with some characters that are pretty easy to digest. In this image, we can see that there are 3 tiers. In the Z tier, we have completed Ultra Instinct Goku. In the S tier, we have Blue Kaioken Goku and Evolution Blue Vegeta. And in the A tier, we have Blue Goku. Now, in numbered order, I am saying that UI Goku is number 1 and is the strongest, followed by Blue Kaioken Goku, then Evolution Blue Vegeta, and lastly, Super Saiyan Blue Goku. Looking at the S tier, I do have them in an order, saying that Kaioken Goku is stronger than Evolution Blue Vegeta. But, since the two of them are within the same tier, I'm asserting that the two of them are interchangeable within that tier. Along with that, I am also saying that Blue Goku in A tier is weaker than the characters in S tier. And that is a hard wall, meaning that the character in A tier cannot be swapped with the characters in S tier. Similarly, the two in S tier also get walled by the character in Z tier being UI Goku. Hopefully this example helps out, but if it didn't, I'm sure you guys will be able to follow along as we enter the trenches. And once again, I used like canonical characters here in canonical forms where it's like obviously like, you know, the stronger form of Goku is going to be in the tier above than the lower one, yada yada. You guys get it. Finally, I want to add the actual scaling part of this video is going to be atypical from your average list. Instead of going in order from bottom to top or even top to bottom, I'm going to be explaining certain characters in batches given the logic/reasoning used for their placement. Hopefully this will better reflect my reasoning, as you guys should see everything sort of build on itself as compared to being blind as to where I'm putting what character. Similar to the tiers itself, if you guys don't understand, I'm sure you'll pick up on it rather quickly, and obviously, once we get to the end of the video, I'm going to go over the completed tier list, hopefully with a nice visual for you all. And with that, let's get into the video. The first section is going to cover the top of our list, as I think here is where we can make the most definitive conclusions. When viewing the characters at the end of the Tournament of Power, there's a concrete top 2 to have, that being completed Ultra Instinct Goku and Full Power Jiren. After this, however, the next 3 are a bit complicated. I think the next 3 worthy of discussion are Evolution Blue Vegeta, God of Destruction Topo, and Super Saiyan 2 Kefla. This is because Kefla is the only other character in the Tournament of Power who fights Omen Ultra Instinct Goku, and God Topo and Evolution Blue Vegeta are clearly above the normal Super Saiyan Blue tier of characters, given Vegeta's form and how easily Topo managed to smoke True Golden Frieza and Android 17. Of these 3, I would probably say it goes Blue Vegeta on top, then God Topo, with Kefla last. Now, Kefla versus Topo is a debate I've seen a couple of times around the internet, and I think if we were to scale them off of Jiren via Omen Ultra Instinct Goku and Vegeta, it becomes clear that Vegeta/Topo would be on top. This is because Once Vegeta and Goku evolve to Blue Evolution and Blue Kaioken respectively, Jiren comments on how the two of them are considerably stronger than they once were. Specifically, Jiren says that their strikes are a bit sharper now. Now, this statement would include Omen Ultra Instinct Goku 1 and 2, as Jiren fights Omen 1 and witnessed the fight of Omen 2. If we're saying that Blue Evolution Vegeta is stronger than Omen Ultra Instinct 2 Goku, then it's pretty safe to say that Vegeta is stronger than Kefla. And since Vegeta and Topo are so comparable, we can put Topo right under him at number 4 on our list, with Kefla chilling at 5. Next up, we're going to cover a batch of characters that are all pretty comparable, and that all of them fight Super Saiyan Blue Goku post Goku Black Arc. Those characters are Hit, Bergamo, Android 17, Ultimate Gohan, True Golden Frieza, and Super Saiyan 2 Kale. I also want to add that it was thinking about many of these characters that inspired me to make this video, because I think this conversation here is one that's really interesting. So to recap why these guys are so comparable, I'm going to go over their abilities, their interactions with this post Goku Black Arc Blue Goku, and the relevant displays within the Tournament of Power itself. To start off with Hit, he has some of the trickiest hacks within all of Dragon Ball. His abilities are pretty obscure, and I think if you were to go through a single watch of Dragon Ball Super, you might not fully understand what he can do. Hit's primary move is the time skip. Now, the main purpose of the time skip is quite simple. It allows Hit to redirect himself, his attacks, and his energy, which creates a sense of confusion and misdirection from his opponent, something that Hit then takes advantage of. From his opponent's perspective, it seems like Hit is jumping from place to place. But from Hit's perspective, he's creating a pocket dimension that allows him to move freely and prepare himself for an attack. While he's doing this, he can also create a mirage of himself that's in whatever position he was in upon entering the time skip. This allows Hit to take advantage of his opponent, thinking that he's in one spot, but in all reality, he's actually getting ready to attack, catching them off guard. He can also do this with his energy blasts, as it seems that they too can enter and redirect themselves within this pocket dimension to catch his opponent off guard. Once again, from the opponent's perspective, the attack is coming from a bunch of random directions, like from a tree or a cliffside, and it's literally transparent. This is how Hit managed to kill Goku in their rematch. Upon reviving himself, Goku and Hit stalemated one another after the Goku Black Arc. It's important to note that Hit did kill Goku once he was caught off guard, but Goku managed to overpower Hit's time skip. This is a version of Goku that was after the Goku Black Arc, but before he knew about the Tournament of Power. This time gap is important to look at, since there's about a 6-month time gap between the end of the Goku Black Arc and before the Tournament of Power. This could mean that this version of Goku is noticeably weaker than one at the start of the tournament. It's also important to note, though, that this fight, after Hit killed him, didn't really become a fight to the death, rather a duel between two rivals. Vados explicitly mentions that Hit probably purposely showed Goku all of his tricks simply for the sake of a good fight. Something that we'll soon see, is different from how Hit fights his opponents that he's fighting to the death. Within the tournament itself, Hit brings quite the display. To start off with this fight with Dispo, although he gets schooled at first, Hit pretty quickly adapts to Dispo's fighting styles and abilities. Hit adapting to Dispo like this is notable, as even without his Light Bolt attack, Dispo is a character who Goku deemed Super Saiyan God, the appropriate form necessary for dealing with him. This fight is also a great example of how Hit uses his techniques against an opponent he's sworn to defeat, as compared to someone he wants to fight like Goku. Instead of using all of his techniques right off the bat, he mixes them up and takes advantage of the fact that Dispo thinks he can only use the time skip, just to mix in other attacks where it's advantageous. All of these things are things that should be considered when comparing him to these other characters. Before we leave Hit versus Dispo, I gotta mention that his interaction with Goku before they part ways involves Goku explaining that Hit grew once again, indicating that Hit is even stronger than he was when he last fought Goku. However, obviously, we're not quite sure how Hit would scale to Goku at this point in time, so that's not to say that Hit is stronger than Blue Goku in this moment, just that Hit is stronger than himself that previously fought Goku. And finally, we have Hit's biggest display of power, his fight with Jiren. Now, stats-wise, it's clear that Jiren outclasses Hit in every regard. Jiren tanks Hit's energy attacks that killed Goku and easily outclasses the time skip. This, however, forced Hit's hand for his strongest technique, the Assassin's Gamble, the Time Cage. Now, the Time Cage involves Hit using the time he stored from his time skips and imposing them on his opponent. This was something that he had to use against Jiren, as Jiren was just too powerful for Hit to fight one-on-one. The Time Cage ultimately fails, as Jiren is so strong that he just chads his way through the Time Cage, breaking free and effortlessly defeating Hit. I think because of this move, one of the better ways to talk about Hit in these 1v1s is to assess whether or not he can pull off the time cage before his opponent defeats him. Narratively, if you ask me, one of the most important things to come from Hit's fight with Jiren is that after Hit is defeated, Jiren proclaims that there is no other fighter who can beat him, and he simply resorts to meditation. This will be important when discussing Hit versus these other characters. Moving on to our next contender, we have Bergamo the Crusher. Bergamo's primary ability is the ability to grow and become more powerful when he takes damage. It seems like this ability is more of an active one than a passive one, as we see him do this in the exhibition match against Universe 7, but not the actual Tournament of Power. While fighting Goku, it's clear that although he's growing in both size and power, his speed seems to be decreasing, or at the very least it doesn't increase with his power, as Goku is dodging and weaving him their entire fight. Bergamo fights Goku in the Universe 7 versus Universe 9 exhibition match, and after Goku fully powering him up, he needed Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken to be defeated. It's important to mention that this wasn't Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken times 20, and at first, mere Super Saiyan, not blue, just normal yellow-haired Super Saiyan, was enough to sort of go toe-to-toe with Bergamo. Because of this latter fact, it's pretty safe to say that Bergamo is pretty irrelevant if we're taking him in a situation where he needs to build up, as even after he got more powerful, Blue Goku pre-tournament was able to overpower his growth and defeat him. If we were to, for whatever reason, assess Bergamo in the moment he was at his most powerful, he could be much more relevant for discussion. But given the big speed advantage that Bergamo has, I don't think it would matter that much anyway. And next up, we have the MVP of Team Universe 7, Android 17. Now, 17 has two main things going for him: his barriers and his infinite energy. These abilities work in tandem with each other, but essentially since 17 has infinite energy, he can literally win any battle that comes down to stamina. His barriers are another ability that's insanely powerful, as it's one of those Dragon Ball abilities like the Mafuba, like the Body Swap, or the Kienzan that can protect 17 from attacks way beyond his traditional defenses. Because he has this infinite energy, he can summon these barriers in succession to deflect an attack that somehow makes it through a singular barrier. Before the tournament, Android 17 fights Blue Goku, with Goku mentioning that he didn't think he would need Super Saiyan Blue to fight him. Goku and 17 don't finish their fight. Although this is the case, seeing his displays within the tournament would indicate that he's not as strong as Blue Goku is full power, as we know that he gets overpowered by Topo in terms of pure strength. During the tournament, 17 has a bunch of incredible displays of power and strategy. He takes the fullest advantage of his moveset to fight the likes of Topo and Jiren, both of which 17 is weaker than. In the case of base Topo, 17 had to resort to running down the clock with his infinite energy, knowing he couldn't beat the Pride Trooper in terms of pure power. Jiren is a bit more of a funky story. With 17 versus Jiren, I think it's pretty easy for someone to take an initial glance at what 17 does and assume that 17 is on par with the likes of both Blue Evolution Vegeta and Blue Kaioken Goku. Although, upon taking a closer look at what happens, I can confidently tell you, though, that this simply isn't the case. The main thing I think people would point to in terms of the upper limits of 17's power would be him being the first person to scratch Jiren's clothes, and 17's self-sacrifice, in quotes, that destroyed the blast Jiren intended to wipe him, Goku, and Vegeta out. Now, the thing with the former display is that it's abundantly clear that 17 was able to do this because he caught Jiren off guard, not because he overpowered Jiren in any way. This is supported by Goku and Vegeta literally taking this moment as an example of what to replicate to actually do damage to Jiren. By that I mean, after this moment, Goku thought it was a good strategy to actually damage Jiren was for him and Vegeta to distract Jiren, and then 17 could take advantage of his attention being split. Obviously, as you guys know, this didn't really work. As for 17's self-sacrifice, this one's a bit trickier to explain, but upon listening to Whis' explanation of what occurs, he explains that 17's blast did not match the power of Jiren's. Thus, he's not as strong as the blast. Rather, 17's explosion managed to detonate Jiren's blast before it hit Goku and Vegeta, saving the two of them. It's also important to mention that in this scene, 17, although he does blow himself up, still puts barriers on Goku and Vegeta to protect the two of them. So it's not even like he negated the power of Jiren's blast at all. He just, like sort of what we said, managed to detonate it so it blew up. This would mean that 17 is not as strong as this suppressed Jiren. Rather, I believe that with both of these examples, both the attention being split and the self-sacrifice, these are feats of intellect and strategy as compared to pure power and durability. Now we're on to Gohan. So in terms of abilities, Gohan doesn't have much going for him. Gohan is typically portrayed as being a strong fighter with the abilities for strategic battle practices rather than incredible hacks that he can use to cheese his way through an opponent. Now here I'm supposed to mention that Gohan is the leader of Team Universe 7 for a reason. He's a team player, and once again, sort of going back to that strategic element, Gohan is a really cool character in that regard. However, also with that, we do know that Gohan has the tendency to get overconfident or outsmarted by those he views as like weaker than him, with the example of Krillin. Now, Ultimate Gohan gets one shot by Blue Kaioken Goku pre-Tournament of Power. Now, the narrative context here is something to be debated as to whether or not Goku needed to go Super Saiyan Blue, as throughout the duration of this fight, Gohan is literally begging Goku to fight him with his full power, aka Super Saiyan Blue. And I just want to say that I'm saying this not to discredit Gohan. It's just something that's going to be important when seeing how these characters compare to each other. For example, I know real quick, I'm probably going to get into it in a sec. With 17, Goku used Super Saiyan Blue and didn't expect to use it, as compared to Gohan, where it can be inferred that Goku did it because Gohan asked him to. Within the Tournament of Power, we know that Gohan gets stronger, as all the Saiyans within the tournament are getting stronger, as said by Vegeta. The only issue is that we have no idea how strong he becomes. We do know at the very least he gets walled by base Topo, as Topo was able to literally laugh off a Kamehameha from him. This would indicate that he's weaker than Blue Kaioken times 20 pre-Tournament of Power, given that we know Goku almost pushed himself to use that form to fight base Topo. And now we're on the Emperor of Universe 7, Golden Frieza. And he's a pretty funny guy. Frieza is similar to Gohan in that he doesn't have the most hacks that allow him to cheese fights, say like Hit or 17, but he does have some powerful techniques like his Death Beam, his Supernova, or his Telekinesis that could catch some characters off guard. Frieza does have a tail, which is something that he used to his advantage a good couple of times within the tournament. And I think the big thing about Frieza that goes under the radar is Frieza's immense durability. Although not specifically stated throughout both the Tournament of Power or Dragon Ball Super Broly, I know we're not talking about that movie, but just quick mention, Frieza takes so much punishment and just refuses to go down. Golden Frieza and Goku knock each other out literally like an hour before the start of the tournament. On top of this, both Beerus and Whis comment on how the two of them are pretty much equals. And something else I want to mention here with this thing, I think it's a little narrative detail that might be relevant in a discussion one might have, maybe not this one, is that after this occurs, Frieza gets knocked unconscious, but he stays in its golden form, which I don't know, I think that's just a cool little detail. Maybe it says something about the golden form's effect on Frieza's durability, like overall. Let me know what you guys think about that. Within the tournament itself, Frieza takes a lot of punishment, including getting Hakkai'd and Topo'd. I'm going to say those are two different things, because, he takes a Hakkai and then Topo punishes him. He also manages to endure the reinvigorated Jiren, who knocked him out once beforehand. In terms of attack potency, he does manage to push Topo into dropping his morals of justice for destruction, which is something that, once again, will come into play once we're putting these guys against each other. And now, lastly, we have Kale. Kale has the most funky scaling when it comes to this batch of characters, but understanding her Berserk / Super Saiyan 2 state helps out quite a bit, so I'm going to attempt to do that here. Kale's Berserk state is an immensely powerful form that causes her to lose control of herself. Within the tournament, she manages to acquire control of this state. Now, this is the form I'm referring to when I'm talking about Super Saiyan 2 Kale. It seems that she is capable of tapping into her Berserk state to power herself up. This can be seen with her fight with Kefla against the Pride Troopers, but when she does this, she puts herself at risk of losing control. At the end of her display, though, she goes berserk and manages to gain control of that power, and through her resolve gets even more powerful within the Super Saiyan 2. Now, her fights with Goku are interesting and may seem confusing at first, so let's go over them one at a time. Her first fight with him involves her going berserk and forcing Goku to go Super Saiyan Blue. It's important to note that Goku here did not expect to use this form, and he was indeed forced to use that level of power. Kale here also Broly's her way through a blue Goku Kamehameha, and then similar to Broly once again, literally grabs Goku's face and ragdolls him, which I think is important to talk about here. Her second fight with Goku involves both her and Kefla. Kale is in her controlled Super Saiyan state at the start of this fight. In this fight, Super Saiyan 2 Goku takes on the two of them at the same time. Kale then needs to evolve again and decides to go berserk. She goes berserk and almost loses herself, but manages to gain control of this form. Now, Tenshinhan, Krillin, and Master Roshi comment on this, explaining that Kale once again gained the power of her berserk state, but managed to not only control it, but surpass it through this control. This would mean that within this fight, she is stronger than her previous berserk self. Kale and Kefla then fight Goku, and Goku goes God, defeating Kefla and forcing the two of them to fuse before he knocks them off. But why is it that Kale, when she initially went berserk, was able to push Goku to blue, but the stronger self-actualized Kale was only able to fight God Goku, when, blue Goku is obviously stronger than God? I think the answer to this is quite simple. Goku himself got way stronger between these two fights. If you watch the tournament power, it's clear that Goku is constantly getting stronger throughout the tournament. This is especially true when looking at Goku's fights post-Ultra Instinct transformations, which this last fight with Kale in particular is after his first Ultra Instinct sign fight. Similarly, as we just went over, Kale is also growing stronger, but when looking at their fight, it becomes obvious that Goku ends up growing even further beyond Kale's own progression. This is something that will become incredibly important in a bit. Okay, so after that massive explanation, we're 20 minutes in, let's finally get into ranking some more characters. Once again, I'm going to go through this with how the logic/reasoning plays out instead of starting from the bottom and going up. Particularly, I'll be talking about some of the concrete hierarchies we can create, and then get into the areas where character rankings are a bit fuzzier. So I think a good place to start is with what we know to be most likely the strongest and definite weakest of these 6 characters. As I already alluded to already, I think it's clear that Bergamo is at the bottom of these 6 characters, and I think Kale is most likely at the top. Particularly with Bergamo, I essentially want to give him like a participation award, like, congrats, you fight Blue Goku, maybe you're as strong as Krillin or something. Since we know Bergamo gets speed blitzed by Goku pre-Super Saiyan Blue, and since Goku as a whole was just testing his powers, if someone wasn't giving him this luxury, it's safe to say that he would likely get washed by them, meaning that we can place him below the other 5 characters. Now, looking at Kale, it's clear that Kale fights the strongest version of Goku of these 6 characters. Not only does she beat the Goku that stalemates Golden Frieza and goes toe-to-toe with 17 and beats Ultimate Gohan, but she also gets substantially stronger than this when she gains full control of her berserk state. Because of this, I would easily put Kale above these 3 reps of Universe 7. But how do these 3 scale to each other? Can we make any conclusions about Frieza versus 17 versus Gohan? Well, my answer is yes. Of these 3, the most concrete statement we can say about them is that Frieza is above the other 2. Now, there are 2 reasons for this. The first one is that Frieza puts up the best fight against Goku as he outright stalemates him, compared to the other 2 where 17 has no concrete conclusion, and Gohan gets one shot by Goku. A bit more of a definite reason is how these 3 fared against base Topo. As previously mentioned, 17 had to resort to trying to run down the clock against Topo, and he doesn't have the stats to beat him. And Topo manages to laugh off Ultimate Gohan's Kamehameha. Compare this to Frieza, who literally bitched Topo. Like, Frieza humiliated Topo. So much so that he, Golden Frieza, was the deciding factor for Topo to drop his staunch belief and faith in justice for destruction. I think this shows that Frieza, in terms of attack potency, blows Gohan and 17 out of the water. Excluding 17's barriers, I think Frieza has the 2 of them beat on durability as well, as Frieza gets brutalized by both Topo and Jiren, but literally just refuses to go down. Including 17's barriers, something that I think is warranted, but since I think Frieza has the massive stat advantage in attack potency and, base durability, 17 would just be delaying the inevitable if the 2 of them were to fight. Now, 17 versus Gohan is something that I think is much less cut and dry. Although 17 puts up a better fight against Goku than Gohan, we do know that Gohan gets stronger throughout the tournament. I think this is one of the first spots on the list where it's truly up to your own discretion. But given 17's infinite energy and his barriers, if you think that the 2 of them have equal stats, to the point that Gohan can't just wash him, then there's really no reason why 17 wouldn't go above Gohan on the list. One last thing to add here that sort of throws a wrench in this discussion about these 3 is when Gohan gets knocked out by Frieza. When he does so, Krillin mentions how the blast was pretty hard, but Gohan remarks that it only stung. I don't think this clearly puts Gohan above Frieza nor 17. This is especially true for Frieza, as it's obvious that Frieza wasn't trying to kill Gohan here, but it could indicate that the 2 of them are more comparable than one might have first thought, stats-wise. If because of this you think that Gohan goes above 17, then by all means place him there. But there's one more guy we got to talk about before we move on. Hit. I saved Hit for last, as he's probably going to have the most loose spot on this list, as his abilities are so cheesy and frankly odd for Dragon Ball. I know it's easy to say that Hit could probably defeat most characters if he lands a time cage, but we know that if someone was powerful enough, then the time cage means nothing. As I sort of was insinuating earlier, if someone can just blitz hit before he can hit the time cage, it's pretty easy to say that he'll lose the fight. So, of these 4 characters, who does Hit beat? I'm going to show my cards and come out and say I don't think Hit is beating Kale. I think Kale is too powerful, and with that similar vein of suppressed Jiren, I think that she would just overpower Hit. I feel like this is supported given her performance against God Goku, but even the weaker state of Kale when she initially went berserk in the tournament, Jiren felt the need to interfere and put her down as compared to Hit, who initiated his fight with Jiren. Because of this, I think anyone above Kale on this list is taking down Hit as well. What about the 3 reps of Universe 7? Honestly, I have no idea. I literally have no clue. I think if you were to base this fight on stats, I do think Frieza is substantially physically stronger and more durable than Hit. And I think judging by his performance against Dispo, you might be able to say the same about 17 and Gohan. The only thing is that do any of these 3 have any response for Hit's attacks? The answer to that is, I don't know. Because of this, I'm going to put Hit in the same tier as these 3, but just know that when we go over the final results, it's going to be interchangeable. To have a concrete order, though, I'll place Hit in between Frieza and 17, as I can clearly see an argument for Hit beating 17 and Gohan than I can Frieza. I think Frieza, I don't want to say similar to Kale's, because Kale is on her own level, but I do think Frieza could wash Hit, just given how powerful he is. So, in summary of this long-winded explanation, I would put these 6 characters in this order, weakest to strongest. Bergamo, Ultimate Gohan, Android 17, Hit, True Golden Frieza, and Super Saiyan 2 Kale on top. I'm putting Bergamo in his own tier below these guys, as I think he is substantially weaker than Gohan, and I'm also putting Kale in her own tier above these 3, as I think she is substantially stronger than Frieza, and I don't think she gets beaten by Hit. But with all that, we're still not done with the Tournament of Power. Now within the ToP, I think there are 2 more characters to consider in this tier, that being Dispo and Anilaza. Now, the reason why I haven't mentioned them yet is that unlike the last batch of characters we covered, these guys don't have the relation of having a 1v1 with Blue Goku. At least, not one that results in a concrete conclusion, meaning that there's a bit more to scaling these guys. I'm going to start with Dispo, as I think he's a bit more complicated to tackle. Dispo is an interesting character to scale, as we know the upper limits of his base form, but when considering the upper limits of his transformed state, it's funky to think about, as he does lose to Gohan, but only under the restriction of limited movement within Frieza's Death Beam cage. We do know that Frieza needed to go golden to fight base Dispo, but once again, this doesn't mean much when scaling his transform state. To make it clear, it's obvious that Dispo wouldn't be beating Kefla or anyone else within the top 5, as we know that within Dragon Ball in general, if you're powerful enough, you just kind of beat the guy below you regardless of hacks, even speed. Also, usually, there's a pretty linear relationship between speed and power in Dragon Ball. So I think it's pretty safe to say that Jiren and Goku are probably faster than Dispo. So with that, where does he fall within this tier? Unfortunately, I have to admit that once again, I'm not 100% sure. But I think with a little bit of narrative analysis, I can safely say that the best way to scale him in a 1v1 would be to assess a battle of attrition. Now, Dispo loses to Gohan when he has his constrained movement, which shows that in terms of pure strength and durability, he's weaker than Gohan. It's important to remember that within the Tournament of Power, the threat wasn't character death, at least not within the fights themselves. Obviously, when everyone gets knocked out, their universe gets erased. But it was characters getting knocked out from the ring. If we take that factor out of the equation, the true question when scaling Dispo to me is whether or not insert character here can outlast his stamina within the maximum light speed mode. There's no direct mention of this form being exhausting within the series, but given that he only uses it once throughout the entire tournament, I think we can say that it has to take some sort of toll on him. So now the question is, who can outlast it? I think this comes down to one's own discretion, and since this is my take, I'm going to say that Dispo probably gets walled by Frieza, as Frieza has the overwhelming attack potency and durability on him. Gohan is the one who beats him, so I think Gohan can take him on as well, and since 17's barriers are incredibly powerful in terms of defense, I think he can easily outlast Dispo, as we already know 17 has the stamina advantage on him. That leaves Hit. I think Hit does beat Dispo, which may be odd for some of you guys to hear, as base Dispo was giving Hit a run for his money. There are 2 things that lead to me saying that though. One being the fact that Hit was able to school base Dispo upon mixing up his attacks and figuring out how he fights. The other is that Hit never uses his energy attacks on Dispo. Since we know that hit strikes can, mess up Dispo, I think it's safe to say that his attack that killed Goku has the power to defeat Dispo. I don't even think Dispo has a counter to this move, as the beams are supposed to be untraceable. Because of this, I would put Dispo below all of these guys, meaning that he would get his own tier, but it would be above Bergamo. Yeah, I think it's pretty safe to say that Dispo, the guy whose gimmick is speed, blitzes Bergamo, the guy whose gimmick is that he is slow. So, there's that. And now we have one last character to discuss before we leave the Tournament of Power. That being the only quadruple fusion within all of Dragon Ball, Anilaza. Okay, guys. Anilaza is cracked. Although the guy gets literally one episode, we see him take on True Golden Frieza, Blue Goku, Blue Vegeta, Ultimate Gohan, and Android 17 at once. This is pretty monumental narratively, as unlike 17 and Gohan, Frieza, Goku, and Vegeta would all rather work alone than work together. But they deemed it necessary to team up just to defeat him. This would place Anilaza just above all the other characters we discussed, besides maybe Kale. However, if we were to compare Anilaza to Goku and then Goku to Kale, I think it's pretty clear that Anilaza is stronger than Kale. This is because we know that Super Saiyan 2 Kale is somewhat comparable to God Goku, but Anilaza took on Blue Goku as well as four other characters that are on the Super Saiyan Blue level. This alone shows that Anilaza would beat Super Saiyan 2 Kale. But does he crack the top 5? No. Once again, I've seen Anilaza versus Kefla or Anilaza versus Topo on some power scaling polls, but I think it's pretty clear that Anilaza is significantly weaker than Kefla. Still focusing on how the two of them compare to Goku, I mentioned how he took on 5 Super Saiyan Blue tier characters. What's important to note is that Goku did not use the Kaioken during this fight. This is because if we were to assume that all of the characters were equal to Blue Goku in this instance, which I know is not true, but this logic actually works in Anilaza's favor, and if we were to then add their powers together, it would essentially be equal to a Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken times 5 Goku, since the Kaioken has such simple multipliers. This would mean that chances are, if Goku wanted to push himself to Kaioken times 10, he would probably overpower Anilaza. Compare this to Kefla, who was an Ultra Instinct level threat. Of course, we know that Goku in Blue during the Kefla fight is considerably weaker than himself in Blue afterwards. So the question then becomes, do we think that this combined power is equal to or greater than Omen Ultra Instinct 2? To that I say, definitely not. As we know, the gap between Ultra Instinct and Blue Kaioken times 20 is monstrous, and that Goku wasn't even pushing himself to use Kaioken. Furthermore, we have to remember that this fight with Anilaza happens before Goku and Vegeta blast through their limits, meaning that the ones that fight Anilaza are also substantially weaker than the ones that fight Jiren like 5 episodes later. So with all of that, I would place Anilaza between Kale and her fused counterpart, but give him his own tiers. I think it's safe to say that he beats Kale and that Kefla beats him. So if you guys are wondering, the list from weakest to strongest we're working with right now is Bergamo, Maximum Lightspeed Dispo, Ultimate Gohan, Android 17, Hit, True Golden Frieza, Super Saiyan 2 Kale, Anilaza, Super Saiyan 2 Kefla, God of Destruction Topo, Super Saiyan Blue Evolution Vegeta, Full Power Jiren, and then finally, completed Ultra Instinct Goku. And with that, let's get into the last and probably the most controversial section of this video, the Goku Black Arc. Okay, so within the Goku Black Arc, there are a total of 4 characters to discuss that can take on these characters within the Tournament of Power. Those characters being Fused Zamasu, Vegito Blue, Sword of Hope Super Saiyan Rage Trunks, and Super Saiyan Rose Goku Black. The reason why I saved these guys for last is that all 4 of them are shrouded in ambiguity when it comes to scaling them to the characters that come after them within the narrative. Before we compare them to the Tournament of Power characters, though, I'm going to compare them to themselves as well as the relevant character that they scale to. Spoilers, it's Goku. It's always Goku, it's always Goku. Now, I want to warn everyone that this is probably going to be the most controversial part of the video, so please, if you think I'm like super wrong and dumb and stupid, please let me know in the comments, as I would love to get some discussions going. A lot of this section is going to involve some pretty heavy narrative analysis within the Goku Black Arc, and I know that the way I view the story isn't the way everyone else is going to view it, meaning that I'm probably going to have a pretty different view than a lot of others. That being said, I'll give some reasons for the views I have as compared to just spouting some BS and just leaving you guys to wonder why I said that. Similar to the batch of Tournament of Power characters that we looked at earlier, let's go over their performance within the arc itself. So to start off with Goku Black is a character who has some of the most whack scaling in all of Super, which I think is really funny because I feel like I've said that like 3 times at this point in this video. To quickly go over the process of his growth, we see that he one-shots Blue Vegeta and defeated Blue Goku and Trunks in the beginning of the Goku Black arc. During their rematch, Goku Black once again messes up both Goku and Vegeta. What's important to look at here is that the fact that Goku Black was able to withstand the onslaught of an enraged Goku and follow up that onslaught by essentially one-shotting Goku back. During their tertiary fight, Goku Black finally gets a match that's worth his time as Vegeta goes to the Room of Spirit and Time and manages to ruffle Black's jammies. This leads to Goku Black realizing what made Vegeta stronger, his rage. Goku Black, upon learning this tool, uses it himself and creates his scythe. Now, the scythe is cracked. Goku Black at this point becomes so strong that his strength is beyond his own comprehension. He accidentally creates a rift that he describes either leads to a distant future or past, or is the manifestation of the anger within his own divine consciousness. This rift manages to create clones of Goku Black that he uses to neutralize both Goku and Vegeta at the same time. Part of this was the clones that kept them busy, but the other one was the fact that it distorted one's ability to sense energy within the proximity of the rift. Something worth mentioning here is that this does not affect Goku Black himself, as he's capable of sensing energy and using instant transmission regardless of this, as compared to, normal Goku who cannot. Now, Goku Black in relation to Goku and Vegeta here deserves some of our time, primarily because Goku Black was able to pacify both Goku and Vegeta without even fighting them himself. Bro literally was able to just stand back and watch his Scythe clones manage to keep Goku and Vegeta contained. Goku Black's goal here was to have Zamasu kill Trunks, Mai, and Bulma, which would then enrage Goku and Vegeta, making them stronger, and upon defeating them, Goku Black would become stronger himself. Now, this extreme level of confidence is something that will be important to remember, as I really don't think this threat is empty, as we've seen Goku Black fight and defeat the enraged Saiyans twice within this arc. And that's excluding all the times he negs an enraged Trunks. Going in chronological order, Fused Zamasu is next. Fused Zamasu is interesting as he's the fusion of Goku Black and Zamasu, so right off the bat we know he's in a tier of his own in regards to strength, as compared to, Goku Black. His powers though seem to be much more simplistic compared to Goku Black's, at least the ones that we see. He uses the blade that both Goku Black and Zamasu use, but there is no scythe, nor is there any complex rift and space-time at play. That's not to say that Fused Zamasu couldn't do that stuff, it's just to say that he doesn't, so I'm not really going to be counting it. There is something I have to mention, though. Zamasu's immortality. Now, I'm going to be blunt and say that I hate discussing Zamasu in power scaling discussions because of this. I think to say that Zamasu wins any battle because of his immortality just doesn't make for a fun discussion. So because of that, and some narrative details, I'm not going to take that route. So, how strong is Fused Zamasu? Well, we know he's stronger than Goku Black. We also know he's stronger than Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks individually at the time of their fusion. The Divine Wrath and the Blades of Judgment are moves that neg all 3 of these heroic Saiyans. I think there's more to say about Zamasu when we mention the Sword of Hope and Super Saiyan Blue Vegito, but before we do that, we need to talk about Blue Goku's display against Fused Zamasu. The reason why Blue Goku versus Zamasu is an important discussion is because we see Blue Goku, while proclaiming he's at full power, he was capable of blasting through a Divine Wrath and corrupting merged Zamasu. This is where some of my heavy controversial narrative analysis comes into play. This narrative decision as a whole is something that I think is innately controversial, and a lot of people have a lot of thoughts about it. As we literally just went over, Goku Black had no issue pacifying both Goku and Vegeta, but it being with his power times that of another being loses a direct contest of that power to someone who should be a fraction of that power. Now, I hope that makes sense, but the point is that Blue Goku by himself should be less than a fraction of the power of Fused Zamasu, given that Fused Zamasu is comprised of Goku Black, who had literally no problem taking on Blue Goku. And these two things happened within 10 minutes of each other within the canon. It's not like Goku left and then came back stronger. But there are 2 views I think that can explain why this is possible. The first is that Zamasu wasn't holding back, and Goku was able to beat this one-on-one. This is because Goku was able to grow stronger between the moment Goku Black and Zamasu fused to when this showdown happened. This would be explained in a similar logic to Goku's growth during the Tournament of Power, in which we see Goku get messed up by Zamasu a couple of times, but he just keeps coming back. Each time he comes back, he gets a little bit stronger every time. This growth could have potentially exceeded that of Goku Black's power, and combined with Goku exhausting all of his power would mean that he could rival Zamasu. The other option is that Zamasu was holding back because he just sorely miscalculated the amount of power Goku was capable of. This would explain why Goku Black is stronger than Goku, but also why Goku was able to contest against Fused Zamasu. This also aligns with the pitfall of Zamasu's overconfidence as a character vice that's mentioned by Trunks and pretty much Zamasu himself. It's worth noting that when viewed in this light, this moment sort of builds up the idea of Zamasu's overconfidence. At first, Zamasu was appalled that Vegeta and Goku even touch him. Then he uses the Divine Wrath and is forced to deflect the Father-Son Gallic Gun, and then he once again underestimates Goku to the point that Goku is able to shatter through his Divine Wrath. Now let's go over the strengths and weaknesses of both of these takes. I think the first stance is a good one to take if you think it's narratively consistent with the Tournament of Power. I think this also makes a bit more sense when you consider that Goku was literally using all of his power, which is something that we rarely see within the series. If you ask me, the biggest place I think it falls short is the portrayal of Goku's power in relation to Vegeta's, as well as just how strong Goku gets. The former implies that although Vegeta trained for a year, Goku is still way stronger than him. Not only is Goku stronger than him, but he's stronger than the combined power of Vegeta and Trunks. The latter implies that Goku went from getting, let's face it, negged by Goku Black to rivaling the power of Black's fusion. Once again, someone who should be thousands of times stronger than Goku Black. This would mean that these Zenkai boosts Goku received gave hit Goku one of the biggest immediate jumps of power in the entire series without the unlocking of a new form. However, I'm sure even if you crunch the numbers, if you were to include new forms, there might still be an argument there. I think if you want to say that Goku's power buff wasn't that great, then it just begs the question, why didn't Goku do this exact same thing against Goku Black, when Goku knew that the threat was the death of Trunks, Mai, and Bulma? You could say that this was because he would have be rendered useless after doing this on Goku Black. But if you believe that he could have done this and the results would have been the same, Goku probably would have killed Goku Black upon doing this, which means that they just would have had to worry about the solo Zamasu, who against Goku, Vegeta, and Trunks is probably no threat. This view also goes against the idea that Goku Black had an accurate gauge on how formidable Goku and Vegeta were, which I think contradicts the multitude of examples of Goku Black beating the shit out of the enraged Saiyans. Conversely, the other view I think allows room for some other consistent narrative portrayals. For example, this aligns with Zamasu's vice of overconfidence, something that's been pretty much mentioned throughout the whole saga. I also think this view accounts for the consistency of Goku Black consistently being in a realm above the other fighters and reaping the benefits of their rage. I think Fused Zamasu holding back also explains why Goku was able to overpower Vegeta and Trunks. It's possible that Goku was rendered a lesser threat, or a threat below Fused Zamasu's full power, something which Zamasu himself paid dearly for. This was a really long-winded explanation, which will come in handy a bit later when scaling these guys to other characters, as since we know that post-Goku Black Arc Goku is incredibly prevalent in the Tournament of Power section within this video. Just know that your individual stance on this heavily affects where you place both Goku Black and this form of Fused Zamasu in relation to the Tournament of Power characters. But what about Zamasu's other forms? Well, after Goku purples him, Zamasu powers up immensely. It's to the point that Goku and Vegeta deem it necessary to fuse into Vegito. Zamasu being this powerful to convince these guys to fuse is a feat in of itself. Furthermore, we see that, for the first and only time ever in the main 4 Dragon Ball series, we see a fusion of Goku and Vegeta not neg their opponent. It's to the point that we see Fused Zamasu was able to knock Vegito to the ground. After doing this, Zamasu gets stronger again, which implies that this guy is absolutely yoked. In this final form of Zamasu, though, Vegeta does imply that his speed decreases as Vegito sort of starts dancing around him. I know I didn't want to spend too much time on this, but this version of Zamasu is easier to scale to Vegito in relation to other characters, so now we can talk about Vegito. Alright, I love Vegito, guys. He's my profile picture for this YouTube channel. He was my first favorite Dragon Ball character. I mean, come on, he's literally 2 guys. I'm telling you guys all this because what I have to say about him might seem a little disappointing if you're a Vegito fan like myself. But we fanboys got to put our biases aside and face the facts. So, this version of Vegito is the fusion of Goku and Vegeta post-Zenkais from fighting Fused Zamasu. Something that I feel like no one talks about in regards to Blue Vegito in this arc was the purpose of his fusion, of his existence. Go back and rewatch this moment, and we hear Gowasu talk about how Goku Black is affecting Zamasu's immortality in their fused body. He says that Goku's mortality has stunted Zamasu's immortality. This is something that could have been taken advantage of if someone were to unleash an attack strong enough to destroy Zamasu's body. It's upon learning this that Goku comes up with the idea to fuse, as he knows that he and Vegeta individually could not defeat Zamasu. But Vegito might be able to generate an attack powerful enough to do so. All of this is important to understand, as we all know Vegito fights Zamasu, but he fails to defeat him. In terms of abilities, we know Vegito's moveset. Everything Goku and Vegeta can do, as well as some original moves like the Spirit Sword and the Final Kamehameha. We also know that both Vegito and Gogeta are typically portrayed as being tactically smarter than their individual counterparts. And with all that, we can now go to Trunks. Sword of Hope Trunks is pretty funny. I think the fact that Trunks comes out of nowhere and does the Spirit Bomb and then utilizes that energy to defeat the strongest antagonist in the series yet is something that I think is nothing short of comical and is just very characteristic of Dragon Ball Super. In their brief duel, we see that Trunks is able to go toe-to-toe with the enlarged fused Zamasu, and upon entering the sword into him, obliterates his material form. It's important to note that Zamasu doesn't go down struggling. He tries to remove the sword from his chest, but ultimately fails. Okay, now that I'm done explaining all these four, we can begin pitting them against each other. I think there's a clear difference one of them has compared to the other three. That being that Super Saiyan Rose Goku Black is significantly weaker than the other three. This is primarily because Fused Zamasu is literally Goku Black times Zamasu's power, and we know that Trunks with the Sword of Hope and Vegito Blue are direct counters for Fused Zamasu. So it's pretty safe to say that all three of them neg Goku Black. So, what about the other three? Here's where some people are going to get really mad. So, of Vegito, Zamasu, and Sword of Hope Trunks, I think Vegito is the weakest of these three. This is once again because Vegito failed to defeat Zamasu while Trunks succeeded. This may seem a bit confusing because we know that Goku Black is debatably stronger than Blue Goku and Vegeta, but Vanilla Zamasu is definitely weaker than Goku and Vegeta separately. So knowing that, how could Zamasu be stronger than Vegito? I think the main reason is that Zamasu gets way stronger right before and during his fight with Vegito. This is to the point that he is capable of taking on the Final Kamehameha. Now, Trunks versus Vegito is a pretty interesting debate, as I think you could argue that Trunks was able to beat Zamasu because of Zamasu's speed decrease, but Vegito could probably blitz Trunks since Vegito is way faster than Zamasu. Because of this point in contention, just know that I'm going to place these three in the same tier next to each other, as I believe there is some wiggle room here. It's just that I would say Trunks is on top, then Zamasu, then Vegito, given once again the nature of the purpose of Vegito and the Sword of Hope was to defeat Zamasu, and Trunks succeeded while Vegito failed. I do want to add that Trunks being stronger than the fusions could make a bit more sense than you may initially think when considering the role of the Spirit Bomb in the Sword of Hope and its relation to the Spirit Bomb's role in the Tournament of Power. While Goku absorbs the energy of the Spirit Bomb, this dude is forced into Ultra Instinct, which explains that the power of the Universe 7 Genki Dama was the direct causal link that spawned Ultra Instinct. And I think because of that, it's safe to say that the buff Trunks gets by absorbing the power of a Spirit Bomb is definitely nothing to slouch at. It even could match the power of a fusion. And now we're finally ready to compare these big guns to the Tournament of Power characters. Let's start with Goku Black. Remember when I went on this huge tangent explaining the two ways to justify Goku versus Fused Zamasu? Yeah, this is where this is going to come in handy. Primarily because I think the upper limits of Goku Black's power puts him in a pretty distinct tier. That being the same tier as Ultimate Gohan to True Golden Frieza. I think if you were to say that Goku blew past Goku Black's power, then it's possible to say that Goku Black would be in the tier below these guys. Personally, I'm going to put them in the same tier, and here's why. Hacks. I think Goku Black's hacks put him in a similar gray area to hit, where he's definitely got upper and lower limits to his power, but that range is pretty wide. For example, when comparing him to the character below this tier, being Dispo, I think it's safe to say that even if you think Dispo is equivalent in strength/durability to Goku Black, Black could pretty easily neutralize Dispo's movements with his Scythe's clones just sort of jumping him. Conversely, I don't think it's too controversial to say that True Golden Frieza sort of just overpowers Goku Black stat-wise. Goku Black versus Gohan and 17 I think is the primary discussion to have here, as if you think he beats either of these two, then it's safe to say he's within this tier of power. Given that Gohan doesn't really have counters to Goku Black's hacks, meaning that he only has the stats advantage for lowballing Black, I think we can put him in the same tier of power. Lowballed Goku Black versus 17 I think makes for some interesting discussions, as I think the energy barriers negating Black's clones is something you could argue. Because of this, I think we could put Goku Black in between Goku's Son and the Chadroid. Highballed Goku Black is a different beast though. I think the highest we could put Goku Black would be just under True Golden Frieza, as I think I can confidently say that even if you rank Goku Black, Frieza just has too much going for him in terms of attack potency and durability. Remember, he was said to be equal to Goku post Goku Black Arc. This means post, all the Zenkais from fighting Zamasu, and post like 6 months of training. One interesting debate, though, is Goku Black versus Hit. This is because, since we see the Scythe warp energy in space-time, it's possible that the Scythe just completely negates Hit's energy displacement. I do think that highballed Goku Black does have the stat advantage on Hit, so the debate here is just hacks versus hacks. In that regard, all we truly have to go off of is headcanon. Because of that, I'm going to place him above Hit, as I mentioned the possibility of negation, but let me know what you guys think of this below. I think this matchup is one that's really fun, and I think just could be really cool to see, even though, obviously it's never going to happen. If we could see like a what-if situation, that would be awesome. Moving on to the big guns, I mentioned earlier that these three are going to be in the same tier right next to each other. Because of this, I'm going to refer to Trunks, Zamasu, and Vegito as these three, or them, as I'm placing this trio right next to each other in terms of power. So right off the bat, we can immediately say that these three are weaker than suppressed Jiren. This is because of a nifty quote from Goku when he gets smacked by one of Jiren's normal punches. After he gets rocked, he says that this was the hardest hit he's ever been hit. This would include Zamasu's attack on Goku and Vegeta post-fusion. It's like a singular punch, but it's good enough for me. I also believe this quote bars the Goku Black characters from the top 4, since this also happens before Goku and Vegeta evolve, meaning it's safe to say that Jiren the two of them fight is stronger than the one Blue Goku fought by himself. Conversely, these three characters are obviously above the tier Goku Black is in. This would mean that these characters would then be competing with Super Saiyan 2 Kale, Anilaza, and Super Saiyan 2 Kefla, since we know they're weaker than the ones above Kefla, but stronger than the ones below Kale. Now here is where I say that I think these three are weaker than Kefla, and this is because of some Spirit Bomb comparisons and fusion analysis. Super Saiyan 1 Kefla's power is compared to the Universe 7 Genki Dama by Whis. Piccolo also says that Kefla, while powering up to Super Saiyan 2, surpassed the power of Omen U Ultra Instinct 1 Goku. I don't think it's too controversial to say that the Universe 7 Spirit Bomb is stronger than the Sword of Hope Spirit Bomb, given the effect it had on Goku, as compared to the effect it had on Trunks. This would mean that Omen 1 is stronger than Sword of Hope. Because we know that Vegito was weaker than the Sword of Hope, then it's safe to say that Vegito, Zamasu, and Trunks are all weaker than Omen Ultra Instinct 1 Goku, and therefore Kefla, given Piccolo's statement. I think in particular, people are going to be pissed about me saying Vegito Blue is weaker than Super Saiyan 2 Kefla, but I think this stance is supported even if we just base this off of the multipliers of Potara fusion. By that, I mean we know that Super Saiyan 2 Kale, at the point in which she fuses, is tens if not hundreds of times stronger than the end of future arc Blue Goku. And this power then gets multiplied by Caulifla's. If we were to assume that Vegeta and Goku's powers at the end of the Goku Black Arc were the same, the question then becomes how do they individually fare against Super Saiyan 2 Caulifla? If you think Caulifla is comparable to them in power, then there's no argument Kefla would be stronger than Vegito. If you think Caulifla would be weaker than the two of them, then the question then becomes whether or not you think Kale's strength compensates for Caulifla's weakness. I would say it does, given the other narrative beats that point to Kefla being stronger than Vegito, which are, Whis and Piccolo's statements. So now we're looking at Vegito Blue & Co. versus Anilaza, Kale, and the other post-Goku Black Arc Super Saiyan Blue characters. Here's where I'm going to make one of the bigger inferences / leaps of logic in this video and say that I think they're in the same tier as Anilaza. This is because Kale and the characters below her scale so closely to pre-tournament of Power Blue Goku. We know there's some time between then and the end of the Goku Black Arc, meaning that a lot of this conversation comes down to how much stronger you think Goku himself got during that time. This is because it means that the more powerful you think Goku grew, then the lower and lower Vegito and Co. go on the list, since if Goku is stronger, he and other characters around him would be closing the gap in power between him and his fused self before any massive power amps, Ultra Instinct, or Fusion. Personally, I think these three belong in the same tier as Anilaza, but given that Goku's fight with Kale is after months of training since the Goku Black Arc and the Zenkai from Omen Ultra Instinct 1, I wouldn't be 100% opposed to putting them in the same tier as Kale. For the sake of a definitive spot, however, I'm going to place them in the same tier as Anilaza, since there's no way to tell how these characters will combat against each other concretely. Obviously, all of this is in the realm of the hypothetical, because none of these characters fight against each other canonically. And now we've done it. We've gone over both the Tournament of Power and the Goku Black Arc, and we've scaled what I've sort of dubbed the Super Saiyan Blue tier characters, or like the big dogs. Now, I'm going to go over the complete tier list from top to bottom. I will then go over a bit more of an advanced tier list that has various forms of characters that we've referenced throughout the project, but weren't the most powerful form of said characters, so I sort of excluded them from the rankings. You guys will see what I mean once I get there. Before that, however, I want to reiterate what this list is. If a tier has more than one character, then I think the order of these characters can be debated. And although this is a tier list, it is also a definitive ranking, meaning that the placement within an individual tier does matter. But with that, let's get into it. Starting at the bottom, with F tier coming in at 17th place, we have Bergamo. After that, in E tier, we have Maximum Light Speed Dispo at 16th place. I place Dispo above Bergamo because Bergamo lacks the power to compensate for Dispo's speed. Above Dispo in D tier is Ultimate Gohan at 15th, Android 17 at 14th, Hit at 13th, Rose Goku Black at 12th, and True Golden Frieza at 11th. I do think that the order of these characters is debatable. Particularly, I think there's an argument for Hit, 17, and Goku Black to go anywhere above or below the other characters on this list. I believe all of these characters either have the stats or hacks to deal with Dispo. Next up, we have C tier, which is just Super Saiyan 2 Kale at the number 10 spot, who shows that she is much stronger than Golden Frieza in the tier below her. In the B tier, we have Vegito Blue at 9th place, Corrupted Fuse Zamasu at 8th, Sword of Hope Trunks at 7th, and Anilaza at 6th. Now, I think all four of these are interchangeable, but the reasoning for them being in the order they are is because of narrative analysis within the Goku Black Arc, as well as the ambiguity of Anilaza's power. After that, we're cracking the top 5 with the A tier, where Super Saiyan 2 Kefla stands alone at 5th place. I think it did a pretty good job at explaining Kefla's power in relation to Vegito's, with the Potara fusion multipliers, as well as the power of the 2 Spirit Bombs. Above this is S tier, where we have God of Destruction Topo at 4th, and Super Saiyan Blue Evolution Vegeta at 3rd. This comes down to Jiren's statement about Goku and Vegeta's power after they break their limits, which insinuates that Evolution Blue Vegeta and Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Goku at that time surpassed Omen Ultra Instinct 2 and thus Kefla. Vegeta is above Topo as he is the one who defeats Topo. And finally, in the Z tier, we have Full Power Jiren at 2nd place, and in 1st place, the most powerful non-God of Destruction / Angel character within the Dragon Ball Super anime, completed Ultra Instinct Goku. Now, with the last 2 tiers, I decided to keep the Saiyans' opponents in the same tiers as them, as in both situations, Goku and Vegeta win their fights because of some emotional power amp, indicating that Topo and Jiren are right next to them in power, respectively. So that pretty much wraps up the initial goal of this video. But for you guys, I have a bit of a bonus list. This one deals with the same characters, but has more tiers and characters discussed because I'll be referring to various forms of the different characters discussed. Since there are more to talk about here, I'm not going to be going over like the numbered order. You guys can count for yourselves. We'll just be going over the tiers. Similarly to the last tier, we have Bergamo at the bottom in I tier. Above that is Dispo, but also Rage Trunks. I put Rage Trunks here as I do think he probably has the power to at least contest Dispo, but is regularly shown to be weaker than Blue Goku and Vegeta in the Goku Black Arc. Above that is the big tier with Gohan at the bottom, then 17. After that is pre-tournament of power Goku, then Hit, Base Topo, Rose Goku Black, and then True Golden Frieza. Now I added Goku and Topo to this tier because, as you guys may recall, these 2 characters were key to scaling the other 5. You could also add pre-tournament of power Blue Vegeta in this list, but I don't really refer to him much throughout the video, so I left him out of the visual here. In particular, I placed Topo in between Goku Black and Hit because I think Topo overwhelms Hit in power, and Goku Black may have trickier hacks for him to see through. Goku, I placed in between Hit and 17, as Hit kills Goku, and Goku never finishes his fight with 17. However, once again, I must reiterate that I think this entire tier is pretty interchangeable, with the exception of Frieza being above Topo and Topo being above 17 and Gohan. Then in the F tier, we have Berserk Kale, who wrecks Blue Goku during the Tournament of Power, and has to be put down by Jiren. After this is the E tier with Super Saiyan 2 Kale, who will be substantially stronger than her powered down self, and normal Fuse Zamasu. Now, Fuse Zamasu's placement here may seem odd, but I think similar to my argument with Vegito, it makes sense to have such distance between this guy and Goku Black, and similar to Anilaza, I think discussions between him versus Kale are rather ambiguous. To double check this, I even rewatched Super Dragon Ball Heroes to see if Zamasu fights the Warrioresses of Universe 6, and he does not. And there is my one reference to Heroes this video. You're welcome. Following that, we have the D tier, which is the same as the last list, going Vegito Blue, Corrupted Fuse Zamasu, Sword of Hope Trunks, and Anilaza. Above this, however, is the C tier with Super Saiyan 1 Kefla and Omen 1 Goku. This is because I already established how I think Omen 1 Goku's Spirit Bomb was more powerful than the Sword of Hope, but also the fact that Kefla was compared to this power in Super Saiyan 1. The reason why I have Kefla first is that Kefla may have the advantage in regards to pure strength, or Goku might burn out too quickly. But it doesn't matter too much, as once again, the two of them are interchangeable. B tier is the same, except one step above, and the characters are flipped. So it's Super Saiyan 2 Kefla, and then Omen 2 Goku. This is rather obvious as characters in more powerful forms go above themselves using weaker forms. A tier is the same as the last list, but with Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken and Goku added at the end. Similar to C tier, I don't think the order here matters too much, but I think Goku would most likely be the one to burn out as compared to Toppo or Vegeta. S tier is now Omen 3 and Suppressed Jiren. Something that I don't think is too controversial, besides maybe we could have given Suppressed Jiren his own tier. And finally, the top 2 remains the same, with it being Full Power Jiren and Completed Ultra Instinct Goku. So that's it. That's the list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As I sort of alluded to, this is probably my most controversial video yet, besides maybe my Broly video, but it was a really fun project, and I think it could really drum up some equally fun discussions in the comments. Since this is a tier list that involves a total of 17 characters, there's obviously going to be a lot of disagreements, and I'm okay with that. I also think I might do some similar projects in the future with different moments in Dragon Ball. In particular, I think like mid to late Z would be really fun. I also think GT would be really cool to look at through this lens, as I feel like once Dragon Ball Super has come out, not a lot of people have talked about the scaling of GT. So, yeah, once again, I just think that would be really fun. Lastly, I might make a direct follow-up to this list by adding superhero and Broly characters, so let me know if you guys are interested in that. I could also do revisiting Dragon Ball Super, whether that be going through the earlier arcs, or staying in the Tournament of Power, but looking at weaker characters. Like I know like Kefla and the other episodes of Universe 7 are characters that I've just like didn't talk about. Part of this would be to see the different ways in which the different series handle power scaling. And by that I mean, I know that original Dragon Ball Z is kind of like known for like being very good at power scaling. Like Toriyama does a really good job at explaining, hey, this character is above this character, now we're introducing this character, and this character is said to be comparable to that character, which means this character is stronger than, you know, yada yada yada. You guys get the point. Like it's very, it creates a hierarchy incredibly well. And along with that, it also uses transformations incredibly well to once again sort of create hierarchies and show progressions of power. Compare that to Dragon Ball Super, where this was me kind of going through the jungle and just sort of like hacking away at a bunch of weeds and a bunch of red herrings and a bunch of inconsistencies. This is especially true if I get to do the Dragon Ball Super manga, which I might do just so I can tear into the Tournament of Power that art of the manga, because as you guys know, I really don't like that art. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you're interested in another controversial power scaling video, then may I recommend my Saitama versus Krillin video. It has a decent amount of views, I'll definitely take it, and that was another really fun project to do. I also want to apologize for this video getting out so late. It's about a week later than I wanted it to. I kind of have this bi-weekly schedule in my head. Not committing to that. This is not an official statement that that's going to happen. Just something I sort of want to like strive for. And then I got really sick. So if I sound different within the two halves of this video, it's because I'm recording them a week apart because this video is so long. I didn't want to strain my voice. And yeah, I ended up getting the flu really bad and I was bedridden for a week. But, you know, I'm back. Here we go. Let's see if this ruins my career or not. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great day, and I will see you all next time.